Welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking about how to make your techniques more fluid. There's so many reasons why it's so important to have fluidity when you execute kicks, punches, knees, elbows, whatever you're doing. Today I'm going to break it down and give you a whole bunch of tips just to make sure that you're flowing from one technique to the next and you understand why it is so important. Today's episode is sponsored by XMartial. I got some athletic shorts on, which they sell, and this awesome tank top. If you guys want to get some gear, whether it be for training purposes or just for outdoor sportswear, head over to XMartial. I have a link in the description below, and you can use that promo code Gabriel Varga to save 10%. Now, the first thing I want to address about fluidity when you let your hands, your legs go is why is it so important? What is it going to help you achieve? The very first thing that comes to mind when I think about fluidity and its advantages is effort level goes down. When you try and throw with lots of power and there's no fluid motion from one technique to the next, it takes a lot of energy. And in a sport where energy levels really matter, the further you go, the more you fatigue, the more danger you're in of losing the fight, it becomes very important to be able to conserve energy by flowing from one technique to the next. In addition, in advantages in having fluid techniques, it makes it more difficult for your opponents to block these techniques. Not because you're hitting harder, but because when you're fluid, you're able to minimize time, boom, 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 between shots, as opposed to stiff, 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 where there's that extra little beat. And it might not seem like a lot, but if I can go from this to something more, there's more chance that I'm gonna be able to mess this guy up, his defense is gonna break, and I'm gonna find an opening and land my attack. And there are probably so many other reasons that you want to have that nice fluid motion in your attacks, but those are the two primary ones that came to my mind when I started filming this episode. So let's get into actual tips to make your techniques, your attacks, a little bit prettier and a little bit more fluid. The first thing that we really want to do is we want to try and minimize the effort in squeezing the arms or the legs. Try and minimize that muscle output when we throw shots. It's good to have lots of power, no doubt. But if let's say I'm going to throw cross uppercut and I'm going to lock my arms a little bit, I'm going to go kind of stiff, the same way that you maybe see bodybuilders throw punches. It kind of looks something like this. And while the technique might still look good, technically, I'm not doing anything incredibly wrong, like dropping my arms or pulling back, you can see it's forced. And that comes with those tight muscles when you try to power, as opposed to just letting my arms flow with the speed behind them. That's what we want. So the first tip is just to minimize the muscles that are tensed, go for the speed, and at the last second, you can lock shots out. That's gonna help you so much. And the reason that we're talking about this today is I actually had an in-person private today, where I was working with somebody trying to make their punches more fluid. If you guys are interested in working one-on-one with me, throughout July, I'm doing in-person lessons if you happen to live in the greater Victoria area, or if you are not and you still want to train with me, no problem. We can get together on Zoom and do some sessions. I have a booking link down below. Tip number 2 is to try and minimize the time from punch to punch. And this makes a massive difference. It's probably the most pronounced thing, the most important thing that I can say to you today. If I try to throw my shots and it's kind of 1, 2, 3, even if I loosen up, but there's that gap, it's going to become very hard to have fluid combinations. And we're not just looking for one snappy, fast technique. We're looking for one technique to the next, everything rolling along. So I want to minimize that time, especially when I come from hands to legs. It's very hard to have a fluid combination when it's 1, 2, 3, and then there's this big pause. I just did a terrible job of that because I'm not supposed to go from here to there. I'm supposed to go and then like that. Now, obviously I over exaggerated the pause, but this is very common for people to go boom, 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 nice fluid hands, and then that little pause. You take away that ability to distract your opponent with high hands and then maybe chop in the leg if you don't have that next technique, next technique, next technique, one after the other, boom, boom, right into it. And when we're in a sport or a fight sport that involves upper and lower body being able to strike, it's very important to minimize those times between techniques, especially when we go from lower body to upper body or vice versa. The next tip that I have for you on being fluid, but also minimizing time between techniques, is not to always think about the extension as being the really fast point, but being aware that the withdraw, that rechamber, is so important. And when I pull my hand back, if I'm going to another punch, what's gonna happen is this is naturally gonna speed up to keep up with this. I'm not gonna go 1, 2, 1, 2. It's gonna be same time. And I like the, I'm not gonna say analogy, but example that somebody gave me years ago. They said, if you wanna run faster, don't worry about running faster with your legs. Pump your arms faster, and your lower body will naturally have to keep up. And same idea here. If I pull my hand back quick, my other hand's gonna go out really fast, as opposed to thinking out and then slow on the way back. There's no immediate need for this hand now to go out really fast because this one's drawing back slow. And the next thing which we want to do to make everything fluid is remember, it's not just arms or legs that are involved with punches and kicks. We have a whole body, right from our feet up to our hips to our shoulders, which is going to help create that fluid attack, as opposed to something like this where it's not going to look as pretty and it's not going to flow as well. We want the whole body engaging. And then when we start letting everything flow from one side to the other, the technique, the combo starts to look very pretty and is not forced as much. The final tip that I want to give you today on having fluid techniques or combinations is to remember that extension and also rechamber, as we just talked about, the speed of the extension and the rechamber, along with the follow through of the punch, that is what equals speed. Do not force techniques or combinations to try and make them powerful or fast or whatever else. If you just flick a shot and then you engage your shoulders, all of a sudden you have a really nice looking punch. And then from there you can roll into your next shot, all with speed, but with the body rotating, keeping it loose. And if we're able to keep things loose, but combine that speed and that follow through the target, that is what equals power. And that in itself will create a fluid attack. If we try to do the opposite, where we're kind of like, and we're going really hard, trying to put in that raw force, it's going to become something that feels powerful, but is not actually as powerful as you can achieve when you just let things go a little bit more and you just combine together that follow through and that speed. And the two of those are going to be the answer to creating nice, fluid combinations. And remember, martial arts, it is a tough activity to get very good at. It's tough to learn a movement where you're trying to hit really hard, which makes you think of muscle, but then at the same time, be graceful. And when you do your movements, graceful technique is one of the most beautiful things, in my opinion, because I love this activity. As opposed to somebody, when I see them hitting pads, I'm like, yeah, they have nice technique. Yeah, they hit fairly hard. Yeah, the speed's there, but there's no grace behind it. That's why somebody like Buakaw, I love watching him execute his kicks because it is so pretty. He has everything dialed in. It doesn't look ugly. It's not a mess. So when you can achieve that, even though it's difficult and it takes a lot of time, then those fluid attacks are going to follow. So let's call it there. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I know this is an area where many people, I'm going to say 9 out of 10 people, which I see train in martial arts, they need to work on this. So I hope most of you guys on the channel, all the subscribers, took a moment to watch this video, write down some tips, and just improve that element of martial arts. If you guys enjoyed the episode, please give it a like. If you haven't already, join the channel and get subscribed. Train hard, guys. I will see you back here soon for another video.